One. Aloha. Welcome to the Mr.G podcast. Today is episode 7. Now, God said everybody should rest one day, but I don't actually follow everything that God says. So, this is the 7th straight day. I'm doing this every day, and I hope you guys enjoy me every day. You can find the Mr.G podcast on wherever you get your podcasts: Amazon Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. And also, I upload the entire VOD, the entire video, the entire podcast on Twitter every day. Because thanks to Elon Musk, now you can upload up to videos up to 2 hours in length on Twitter. So the first place I upload each episode is on Twitter every day. You can also find the full episodes on YouTube too. And I cut clips on it and post it on TikTok as well. Follow my new TikTok, Mr.G podcast page. Now, with that being said, congratulations to the Miami Heat, who won Game 3 at home yesterday to take a 3-0 series lead against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I predicted the Heat would win the first 2 games in Boston, which they did. The next game they won. Now they're up 3-0. No team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in a best of 7 series. And that goes for all the major sports, all the major American sports, baseball, hockey, and basketball, where they have 7-game series. So both the Denver Nuggets are up 3-0 in the Western Conference Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Miami Heat are up 3-0 against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. So if history tells us anything, we can pretty much see who will be in the NBA Finals. It looks pretty solid that it's going to be the Denver Nuggets versus the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat and Bam Adebayo and Duncan Robinson and the great players and coach as Pat Riley as a general manager. They've had the most incredible playoff run. The Miami Heat is full of great, their organization is full of great playoff stories. And this one is yet another one. And who knows, maybe Jimmy Butler in the Miami Heat can win the NBA championship and be the first number 8 seed ever to win an NBA championship. In the Western Conference, we have the Denver Nuggets. Denver, the franchise, has Denver Nuggets have never made it to the NBA Finals. They're one win away from going further than their team has ever made it, and so congratulations to them. And their game 4 is today in the Staples Center. I'm guessing the courtside seats aren't going for $30,000, $40,000 each, like they were against the Golden State Warriors, or they were in the games 1 or game 3 and game 4. Excuse me, game 3 of the series. But I imagine the courtside seats are still pretty expensive. With that being said, I don't want to be rude, so I want to thank my lovely, beautiful cat here. She's my little Ricky. I have my wonderful lady from England, Manchester, England. Welcome here. This is Jim, and say hi, Jim.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And you're from how far from Manchester are you?
I don't wish to disclose that publicly, but Manchester is my city, yes.
Okay. Because it's well known just in the States here across the pond, because of their famous football team, their famous soccer team. There are 2 favorite teams, or there are 2 famous teams, Manchester United and Manchester City, I guess. But this podcast isn't about soccer. It's not about football, and it's not even about basketball. I am a huge basketball fan, and this is the time of the year I'm a huge NBA basketball fan, and this is the time of year that the comes down to the championship games. So I will mention it. Like I said, I've also made thousands of dollars betting on basketball. And if you check some of my earlier podcasts, some of my earlier tweets, you can see how right I am and how good I am at betting on basketball. I have not bet anything this year. You need to pay to play. But just last year, I made almost $1,000 and paid a lot of bills this time last year, betting on basketball and using some of the tricks that I've talked about in this podcast. Not many people pick the Denver Nuggets to sweep the Los Angeles Lakers, and who knows? Maybe they won't. Maybe the Lakers will come out in Game 4 today and make it somewhat of an more interesting series, a gentleman's sweep. Maybe the Nuggets will win in 5. I still think it'd be hard for the Nuggets for the Miami Heat to close out the Boston Celtics, and the refs are going to be siding with the team that's down 0-3, the Lakers and the Celtics, because each NBA game represents almost millions of dollars in revenue, almost $1 billion in revenue. Each playoff game is over $1 billion in revenue for the city and for the NBA. And so money talks and bullshit walks. And so there's going to be a lot of bullshit calls because they don't want a sweep. They don't want the Nuggets to sweep the Lakers. However, the Nuggets are just a much better overly matched team. The Nuggets are a much better team than the Lakers, and I think that was proven in Game 3. The Lakers threw everything they had, and it still wasn't enough. And basically, the Nuggets kept them just at arm's length until they had to just push them away. And I think the same thing's going to happen today. I think the Nuggets will sweep the Lakers because they're that good of a team. As far as the Eastern Conference, I don't think the Heat are going to be able to sweep, but I think they'll win in 5, just like they did in the first round against the Milwaukee Bucks. All right, so enough hoops talk right there. I invited my guest here today because we're actually going to be talking about sleepwalking. And now, sleepwalking is something that I'm familiar with. I do it all the time. No, seriously. Is your mic on mute, Jamie? Because I expected to hear a laugh after that joke, and I didn't.
Well,
I didn't get
I'm not
any.
I'm not the talent here, you know.
I didn't
It's
get. I go to cold room there. Seriously,
sorry.
sleeping not necessarily, but dreaming is a uh, mystery in some ways. Scientists still don't know why that we dream. And my lovely guest here, she whenever I'm sleeping around her, I somehow manage to have the craziest dreams. But scientists don't really know why we dream or what that exact purpose is or why animals dream. And it's proven that animals also dream. You can see your cats and dogs dreaming. Your dogs, they're when the most common, you can dream in any state, but the most common sleep state to dream in is REM sleep state, rapid eye move sleep. And generally, if an animal is in REM sleep state, then he's dreaming, he or she. I don't know what the animal's pronoun is, but the animal is dreaming. So when you see your cat's eyes flickering or you see your dog's whiskers flickering, that means that they're in deep sleep. And I have a cat here, Kirk. You knock him out, you could go up to him with some cymbals and be like, "Bang," and he's still asleep. Like he's in deep sleep. And I see Kirk having the most craziest dreams. And humans are the same way. So personally, my issue, I had issues with sleep and insomnia my whole life, as well as sleepwalking. Sleepwalking is much less common with me, and it generally has only happened when I drink alcohol. And since I don't drink alcohol, sleepwalking isn't very common with me. But uh, sleep apnea and as far as me, insomnia is something that I've dealt with my whole life, and even when I was a kid. And it's hard for me to get into REM sleep. And so generally most nights, last night was a good night where I actually got a couple hours of sleep, of good REM sleep. But a lot of nights, especially recently, I'll go through the whole night pretty much tossing and turning where I'm never actually asleep. So if you were to walk in the room, I would just open my eyes right away and I would hear you walk in. And I'm kind of in like a semi-conscious state where like all these different thoughts are flooding in your brain, and sometimes they're mixed up and a hodgepodge of like different things that you've seen, like just like weird shit. Like somebody will come up with a tube of peanut butter and just start patting it on your face, and then you start flying away, or like just weird ass shit. Like, and I'll do that for the whole night, which it does correlate to some rest for your mind and body. And that's one reason why they've determined why you need to sleep, because you need to rest your brain and your body and everything else. So some people, like I've seen old-fashioned people say, "Oh, well, you know, even if you can't sleep, you just want to lay there and get some body rest." You know, I've heard older people say that, but the best advice I've heard, having insomnia my whole life, is if you can't sleep and you know you're not going to go to sleep, the best thing to do is get up, read a book, watch something on TV, take advantage of the time. Because if you spend the whole night just tossing and turning, then the next day you're even more tired and you lost all those hours by doing nothing and not resting yourself. So last night, well, like I said, was a good night. Normally, I'll toss and turn. When a bad night, I'll toss and turn the whole night, and then I take a long nap. During the nap, I'm so tired, you know, in the afternoon of the next day that I'm actually able to get an REM sleep much easier. So I could fall asleep wherever, and then within 50, I'll sleep for a couple hours. But during those couple hours, I get the important REM sleep that every mammal needs, and then I wake up, you know, tired, and or I wake up sometimes more refreshed, but mentally better. And personally, I've had a lot of experiences with lack of sleep. You know, I've had to sleep at really tough locations and in really different spots. So I have a lot of experience. But as far as sleepwalking goes, like I said, that generally it's only happened when I drank alcohol, and since I don't drink alcohol, it's not that common. But one thing they say is you never want to wake up a sleepwalker. And one reason why is because a sleepwalker, if you wake them up when they're sleepwalking, they could go into shock because they open their eyes and they don't know where they're at or how they got there. When you see somebody sleepwalking, a lot of times, most of the time, their eyes are open. And I've been awoken while I was sleepwalking a few times. Once was when I was staying in a house with a bunch of people, and I just found myself in the kitchen with everybody laughing at me, and that's because I would go in the kitchen and start just opening cabinets and scratching the walls, and sometimes I'd like go in the closets thinking that they were bathrooms, and just like wander around. And my eyes are open a lot of these times, but I always had roommates like to like help me back to my place or whatever, and to make sure I didn't wander outside, which I sometimes have done. And sleepwalking has gotten so bad. There have been people that have committed heinous acts and were found not guilty because they were sleepwalking during the time. People can go in their cars, drive places, you know, be totally asleep, but like there have been instances of people being pulled over while they were sleepwalking. And um the scariest time, one of the scariest times the scariest time that I awoke when I was sleepwalking, I totally went into shock. And that wasn't when I was awoken in my living room. And the thing about going into shock, and when you're sleepwalking, your eyes are already open. So one of the craziest things I ever experienced was when I was awoken while sleepwalking, and it's not like you open your eyes and you're in like a new environment, like, oh, hey, where am I? No, it's more you're just there, like you try time port. And that was the freakiest thing I ever experienced. So it's like we're talking right here, right now, and all of a sudden, boom, you're like on top of a mountain, and it's Antarctica. That was exactly what it's like, except it wasn't Antarctica. All of a sudden, it was boom. Like first, I was like walking like in a jungle, and the daylight is out. I'm like, oh, nice jungle. All of a sudden, boom. I just open my eyes, and even then, I didn't even remember the jungle. I just opened my eyes. I didn't know where I came from or who I was or what my name was. I opened my eyes, and I'm on the bottom of a ravine, standing on an upside down shopping cart, like standing like I'm you know, Daniel's son in the Karate Kid with on one foot, and the water's just getting higher and higher and higher. And I'm just like, oh my God. And my arms are just out, because when somebody goes into shock, a lot of times their arms are like this because they can't move their arms. They don't, that's a characteristic of people that go into shock. So I'm there, and I don't know how I got there or what I'm doing there, but the rain is just coming down, and I'm in the bottom of this cliff, and there's like 6 foot walls on both sides of me, and the water is just getting higher and higher, and I can barely move, and I hear like foreign people yelling in the distance, kind of like right now. But like, yeah, I hear like foreign language in the distance, like, "Wah, la, la, la." I'm like, where am I? Am I in Asia? You know, how did I get here? Who am I? You know? And then I hear some, "La, la, la, hey, la, la," and then they like throw me a huge branch, and then I climb up the branch out of the ravine, and I'm like fucking naked. I'm like naked, and then they're like, "You almost died. You know, what were you doing in there?" You know, and then I came through, and they put me back in the tent, and then I had I was like laid naked in my tent. They're like, "How the fuck did you get to that tent?" Yeah, I was staying in a tent, and I guess backtrack if you want to know how I've gotten to the ravine is I won't backtrack too far, but I'll backtrack a little ways. So I found myself in a part of Hawaii that I'd never been before. And I walk through this jungle. And as I'm walking through the jungle, I see like some Hawaiian kids walking out. I'm like, is it safe back there? And they're like, yeah, just watch out for the Micronesians. And I thought they said micro Asians. So I'm like looking for like tiny Asian people. But I walk back there and apparently like there's these group of Micronesians. And for whatever reason, I'll tell you some other time, but I had a box full of like totally expensive liquor, like 40-year-old scotch, like 30-year-old scotch, like $200 bottles of wine. Like I had this bottle of like this box full of like 10 bottles of expensive ass liquor that I had when I left the house, right? And what the fuck? Okay. So I leave the kind or I run into I'm walking down this trail and all of a sudden this pit bull comes running up to me. He's like, "Roar, roar." I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like holding the liquor and these Micronesians come out and I'm like, here, like peace offering. And I hand him the bottle. He's like, oh, and then the dog turns out to be friendly. And so I'm drinking with these Micronesians and we're chugging back these like hardcore, like 30-year-old bottles of scotch and stuff. And I remember telling them, I remember like, they're like, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Texas. And then they were like, huh? And I'm like, Texas. And they were the very first people I've ever met in my whole life that had never heard of Texas. And I'm like, Texas. And I spelled it Texas, Texas. And they still, like, the whole group of them, like 5 or 6 of them were like, oh, Texas? Like, we never heard of. I'm like, Texas. But one of them had like a old Kobe Bryant jersey on. So I'm like, Spurs, San Antonio Spurs. And then they're like, oh, Spurs, Duncan. Duncan. And I was like, yeah, Tim Duncan, Tim Duncan. And then they're like, you know Duncan? I was like, yeah, San Antonio, Duncan. And like I said, I drank so much liquor, and apparently I like tried to hit on their Micronesian women. They invited like some Micronesian women. So it was like me and like 5 Micronesian dudes, and they have their Micronesian women. Like, oh my goodness gracious. What the hell was I doing drinking with a bunch of Micronesians in some ghetto jungle? But like I said, this was years ago, and this is 8 or 9 years ago, and so I did not know Hawaii like I do now. That would be something I would never do now. But I ended up drinking with those Micronesians. Then I pass out in the tent, and then I somehow like sleepwalk out of my tent and fall into the ravine. And luckily, the Micronesians were nice enough to pull me out of the ravine because I don't know how long I would have made it like that. But yeah, it was an interesting story. Another time I woke up sleepwalking in a strange house with a guy naked next to his wife or girlfriend, and she was naked, and I was just laying on the floor, and I had just like walked into this house like as I was sleepwalking and into this person's bedroom and laid on their fucking uh floor. Yeah. Like I was like, what the I know.
Oh dear. Are you
Like,
sure you're
sorry,
not missing part of the
wrong
story here?
house. Like, I'm just gonna sleep here. And like, but yeah, that's one reason why I don't drink alcohol because I tend to sleepwalk. And since I live alone, it's not very, it wouldn't be good for me. There's a lot of reasons not to drink alcohol, but uh sleepwalking, that's on the top of my list. But yeah, thank you for listening and thank you for watching. But this I gotta restart the meeting here. But yeah, aloha everybody. Have a great day. I'll be back for another episode tomorrow. And don't forget to lock your doors at night because a sleepwalking Mr. G may wander in there. All right.